Good morning. We begin with a debate in what is said to be one of the hottest state house races in North Texas. We're talking about House District 115, the northwestern part of Dallas County, DFW Airport, Carrollton, Farmers Branch, Las Colinas, and part of Addison as well. Republican attorney Matt Rinaldi is running for a third term, facing a strong challenge from Democrat Julie Johnson, a Dallas attorney. And joining the questioning, as always, is Bud Kennedy from the Star-Telegram. Thanks, both of you, for coming in today. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Matt, let's start with you. First question, why do you think you're facing such a strong challenge?
Well, I think the national election climate has been such that I think Republicans all over the country are facing a strong challenge. But as the election starts becoming about local issues, I think we're overcoming it and separating in the race. What our local voters are concerned about is property taxes are too high. And I've been working with Governor Abbott on his plan to cap property tax increases at 2.5%. And my opponent actually opposes that plan and would allow local property taxes to skyrocket by an unlimited amount. Also, that's not surprising, my opponent doesn't live in the district. So I find that Republicans, Democrats in the district alike are concerned about my opponent's stance on property taxes and concerned my opponent doesn't live in the district.
Julie, property taxes and where you live.
I absolutely live in the district. He is absolutely wrong on that. And I'm also building a home. I find it so interesting that he is challenging residency when in 2014 he did not live in the district that he's elected to serve at this point and had to move into this district and didn't file his homestead until after he was elected. So I find this whole discussion about residency to be extremely disingenuous. Having said that, the property tax issues is a big issue. The taxes are going up and up and up. The budget that he voted for in the last session assumes a 14% increase in our property taxes. So again, he's disingenuous in saying he is concerned about property tax relief when he has failed to address this. In the education funding bill, HB 21, he had multiple opportunities to address it, and he voted 10 out of 10 times against trying to reform Robin Hood and provide tax relief to the people of 115 and Texas.
Matt, we'll let you respond to that, then we're going to move on to a different topic.
Well, yeah. Go ahead. Well, no, absolutely. First of all, I lived in the district I lived in Irving for 10 years. I lived in the same house for 4 years prior to the time running. That's just not true. And nobody believes that Ms. Johnson lives in her little apartment in Addison and not her $1.7 million mansion in Preston Hollow. With regard to education, HB 21, that's a complete mischaracterization of the bill, had nothing to do with reforming Robin Hood. In fact, the author of that bill, the chairman of the Public Education Committee, Dan Huberty, is endorsing my campaign because of my commitment to public education.
Julie, we should clear this up. Where did you sleep last night? What's the nature of this disagreement over address?
I slept in Addison, Texas.
Okay, Matt,
in our district.
Why do you think that's not right?
Well, I think it's not right because she owns a $1.7 million house in Preston Hollow that she claims her homestead exemption on. And the residency requirements constitutionally are you need to live in the district for a year prior to election day, and that's just not the case.
Okay.
He's absolutely wrong on that.
Okay. Matt, you developed a reputation based on the end of the session last year where there was a fracas on the House floor, there was some shoving, you called ICE on some people who were in the Capitol that you believe might not be in the country legally, and then you showed other people that you had called ICE and bragged about it, and it resulted in people rushing the desk and coming to your desk. But how do you feel about this reputation as a hothead from that incident?
I completely disagree with your characterization of the incident.
That was the way it was factually published and the way you described it on talk shows.
No, it absolutely was not. I was attacked and threatened on the House floor after that happened when I was with my pregnant wife on the House floor. The initial articles tried to portray it as my fault and published 100% lies about the incident, which were later disproven. And as far as the calling ICE, we had a mob descend on the Capitol that day. They were shutting down the House chamber, holding signs saying they were illegal, and they were resisting police officers.
There were no pictures showing any signs in the Capitol saying anyone was illegal.
Oh, there absolutely was. I can show them to you.
There were none in the House chamber.
You are absolutely 100% incorrect.
But this is based on your own description. Now, according to your own description, you told another member of the House, "I'm armed and I will defend myself." Is that what you said?
When I was threatened, when I was with my 5-month pregnant wife, threatened and assaulted on the House floor, yes.
And what were you armed with? What were you? Did you have a pistol? Or were you wearing a pistol that day?
I think that's inconsequential.
Matt,
I think it's
let me ask you
inconsequential. I was a victim of a mob that we see now time and time again as Republicans get attacked, get accosted in coffee houses and in restaurants. It's a product of the toxic political climate we see today because people are vilifying Republicans. They're intent when they file bills. For example, my opponent on her website forecloses working with any Republican member of the legislature because she labels every single Republican legislator a racist for voting for the sanctuary city bill.
That is absolutely not true. And the problem
you could look at your website.
The problem is that your conduct on the last day of the session was reprehensible. And that is one of the reasons why I have so much support within this district, because they do not identify with the hostility that he brought to this office. He engaged in racial profiling of a bunch of kids who were protesting a bill that they did not agree with, exercising their constitutional rights to protest. And you didn't like it because they disagreed with you. And with respect to Republicans, I have a lot of support and endorsements from a lot of Republicans, including the Republican mayor of Coppell, including the Republican who held this seat before you.
Well, let's talk about that.
No. Let me respond. Let me respond to a very serious allegation. Okay, that is 100% false, and I think it's disgusting that you talk about hostility. I was attacked and threatened on the House floor.
You
did not do anything. I did not initiate it.
You were proud.
Let me. Can I respond?
The video shows.
Can I respond?
Matt, the video.
Could I respond to my opponents, Bud and Julie?
Go ahead, Matt.
I do want to point out the video shows you made a call.
Go ahead.
Can I respond
to this? Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I was attacked and threatened on the House floor, and afterwards, because of the mischaracterization of that incident, my family received death threats and was under police DPS protection for several weeks. And the fact you would make the lie that I initiated it the centerpiece to your 100% negative campaign, I think is disgusting and what's wrong with politics.
Let me ask you about
It's
that
all
because
true.
that's let me ask about that. The reporting that happened that day suggests that you went over and talked to Representative Romero and Navarez, telling them that you called ICE on the people in the gallery upstairs. Why even go over there and tell them that? Why not just make a phone call and stay at your desk and wait for something to happen?
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is there was a mob that descended on the Capitol during Family Day when we were there with our kids and wives.
But did you need to go over to your colleagues and say something, Matt?
Yes, because they were inciting the mob. They were raising their hands. They were encouraging them to engage in mob behavior. Absolutely.
Yeah, let's talk about property taxes and public education. You guys don't seem that far apart on wanting to pay down, to buy down rather some of the rising property taxes. What's the biggest policy difference between you two? Julie, we'll start with you.
Well, I think we need to require the state to pay more than what it has been paying, and he disagrees with that. I also think that we need to retain local control with our local school boards and our local mayors to set their tax rates on what is reasonable for their communities. He wants to legislate that from Austin, and I think that that's inappropriate. You know, we elect in our municipal elections our mayors, our school boards to manage these issues across the state, and every city is different, and they all have different needs for police and fire and education and funding the necessary services of our cities. Other cities are having rapid population growth at different rates, and so their budgets are increasing by virtue of more people being there. And to put these arbitrary caps like this 2.6% that he wants to do is unreasonable, which is why I have so much support from the mayors of the cities in this district.
We're giving the power to the people to veto any property tax increase over 2.6%. That solves the #1 issue we're hearing about is the skyrocketing property taxes. Now, what my opponent wants to, and by the way, I do want to spend more state money in education. I've added $4 billion to education during my 2 terms in additional funding, and I will continue to do that. In fact, my plan,
voted against
the
education funding bill
already
this past
talked
session.
about that wasn't.
They wanted
You're
$1.8 billion,
mischaracterizing
and
it.
you voted against it.
You're mischaracterizing the bill. Let me finish my question. Let me finish my answer. So my plan is to use state money to buy down school property taxes and then cap the property taxes at the local level. What my opponent wants to do is not only not cap property taxes, so when we buy it down, property taxes increase, but also use rainy day funding to spend on ongoing educational expenses. That puts a $10 billion hole in the budget. Where are we going to make that up? I mean, you're talking about huge amounts of tax increases on a state level or possibly even a state income tax, and I think that's destructive.
We have about about 45 seconds left. I want both of you to tell me briefly, if elected, first day on the job, first priority.
Education, finance.
Property tax reform and relief.
And we'll see what happens. These are the two candidates for House District 115, the northwestern part of Dallas County. Thanks for both coming in.
Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
I
so much
appreciate
for
it.
having us on.
Thanks.